Hello, everyone. I'm Kristen Nettapak, and welcome to Tea and Magic. We do this show every Friday on the Magick Grove. If you didn't know what the Magick Grove was, if this is perhaps the first show that you're watching, it is a magical realm that we have over on Facebook where we're constantly sharing stories and tips and everything you need to know about magic, about spirituality, and about all of the amazing things that are happening in the world right now as we raise our vibration. So this show, I get to bring on every week a very magical guest. And today I have an amazing guest who I am such a big fan of. Stephenie Zamora is a life and a business coach, the author of Unravel and Awesome Life Tips, and the co-founder of Call of the Void TV. And her work merges the worlds of personal development, energy healing, intuitive coaching, writing, mixed media. She's like a jack of all trades, and she helps individuals rise up and come back from their most challenging chapters in life. So hello, Stephenie. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. I was just saying before that, I've been following your work for so long. I get your awesome light tips every single day. And I want you to know that there are I subscribe to a lot of things, and sometimes you subscribe and then you're like, I'm just over that. I've never unsubscribed to your awesome light tips. Every day I'm like, I do every day. I'm like, oh, I got to read that. Okay, where is it? Where is it? I got to read it. And it's always so relevant. But you just do so much more than that. And I would love to, before we ask you what you're drinking, I would love to just get an introduction of who you are and what you do and let the world know.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I always say purpose is my purpose. So I have, over the last decade, built up a media company that is all about helping people step into their purpose. So who they're here to be and the work they're here to do. And because I am so multi-passionate, my business has become very multifaceted. So we help people at all points on that journey. So everything from that deeper healing and growth work in the aftermath of challenging chapters and big life transitions, which we all go through, to helping people identify their purpose and their passion, to helping them build businesses and careers around it, all the way to brand management, development. Like, we have just so many facets of the company at this point. And I really love it because that's been my personal journey of really uncovering, like, why am I here and what is my purpose and what am I here to contribute in the way that only I can, and have just really had to learn a lot of skills and a lot of different things over the years. And so I love helping people step into their purpose, because I really believe that we come into this life with it already hard coded into us, and then life shapes us as we go through it, and we lose sight of it, of course, because the world is not really designed to help us flourish as who we're uniquely here to be. And so it's been my own personal journey of finding my purpose. And it's just, I love watching people claim who they are and what they're here to do and just show up fully expressed, because that just makes everything, as I'm sure you know, so much more fulfilling and magical when we can do that.
You are preaching to the choir over here. Everyone on this show knows, it is called Tea and Magic. And I think when people come on the show, they're like, we're going to be witches and talk about spells. And like, the majority of our conversations are actually about real magic. And to me, real magic is discovering your power. It is clearing out the vessels so that you can find your purpose and you can bring all of this light and energy and love and creativity into the world. And that to me is magic. And it's so great to have you here, because that's exactly what you do. There are so many things I want to dive into, but first I do have to ask you what you're drinking.
I am drinking green tea. It's the only form of caffeine that I can handle.
Oh, yes. I'm the same. I actually didn't put it in a mug, but I have my cacao, and cacao has a little bit of caffeine. And like, if I have anything more than that, I will fly off.
Yep.
You'll just be jitters all day, right? It's like, there's enough going on with my energy that I don't really need to add to it.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, where I really want to start is, I definitely want to know, well, let me back up. What you just said a moment ago, which I thought was really important, is that when we come into this world, we have a hard-coded purpose, but we don't live in a world that supports that. When you come into the world as a human being, as a child, obviously you have all this energy and love, and then you get embedded into these systems that are very much designed to be oppressive. And I'm really curious, at what point, or if there was any point in your life, and I'm sure there was, that you found you were caught up in these systems? And what was the moment like when you realized, like, I need to get out of here? Because I feel like that is, and I know that the spiritual awakenings happen in so many different ways, but very specifically talking about realizing that, oh my gosh, I'm trapped in this illusion.
Yeah.
And this is not how life is supposed to be.
That is such a great question. And that's exactly what I say, is that we come into this world with a purpose, and we're so pure and we're so connected to that. And we are born into a world of systems. So our family system strips us of who we are, the school system, like education, and the workforce and society as a whole. And so I was very existential as a child. I was always kind of like, what is the point of this? And definitely am one of the personality types that doesn't feel like I belong. So that's been just inherent to my entire existence in this world of not quite understanding how to fit and where I'm supposed to be, and feeling like maybe I was born at the wrong time in the wrong place, or maybe even on the wrong planet. So that was always there for me. But when I was in high school, I was very depressed. I was very unhappy and suicidal, and just didn't know, like I said, where I fit and what I was supposed to do. And had this amazing art teacher that introduced me to graphic design, which is what I ended up going to school for. So that was one thing that helped me kind of say, okay, I'm here and this thing seems interesting and exciting. Like, I'm going to actually try and make something of myself and my life. And so I shifted into this mode of, like, I graduated high school early and I went to a 3-year bachelor program, and I got this amazing job right out of college, and I bought a townhouse with my high school sweetheart. And so I did everything by the book, and I did all of this by the time I was 21. And I remember vividly, and this is one of like 2 really big awakenings in my life. I remember vividly sitting in our 3-bedroom, 2-story townhouse in my office, because we're 2 kids just out of college who don't need such a big house. But I'm sitting in my home office, and it was like waking up from a dream. Like, all of a sudden I could see myself and my space and my life very clearly, and a distinct feeling of like, how did I end up here? Where am I? But how did I even end up here? Like, this is not me. This does not feel like my life. I don't understand how I got here. And I really was not happy, even though I had checked like all the boxes you're supposed to check. And I did it very quickly. And so I took a sledgehammer to my life, is the way that I describe it. I just started picking it apart piece by piece and trying to figure out, who am I supposed to be if it's not this? Like, I did everything I was supposed to do. I got all the things that they tell us are going to make us happy. I have the great job, the salary, the car, the house, the guy. And I was absolutely miserable. I didn't know who I was or what I wanted. And so I really started to dismantle my life piece by piece. I broke up with my high school sweetheart and jumped into another relationship. I moved across the ocean to Hawaii. I decided to start my first business with my ex, who was also a designer, and still just could not, like, I kept changing all these external things, but I could not find happiness. It was like this ever elusive thing. And I remember sitting in Hawaii with my then boyfriend, who was a designer, and we had started this design business in a recession, which was like this proud moment for us. And we've built this brand and we're doing all this cool stuff, and sitting at the beach with him and saying, I really don't think I'm here to be just another designer, which is like, not to say that if that's your purpose, there's anything wrong with it. It just wasn't mine, and feeling like it was a tool for me to do something bigger in the world. So that was my first real moment of it. And it took me a good 7 or 8 years before I was really able to get traction around, who am I here to be in the world, and how do I actually live my purpose and live a life that's fully aligned for me? Because I didn't realize that there was coaches out there, that there was books and programs and things that I could utilize. So I really just kind of fumbled around in the dark for a long time.
First of all, you are telling my life story. Grew up in a small town. I'm not going to tell this in length, but I just love this because I grew up in a small town. I had an art teacher who showed me the way. I went to school for art. I became a graphic designer. My partner for 16 years was a designer. I mean, it's just crazy. I'm listening to you going,
awesome.
yeah. And that's the thing is, we check all the boxes and it's like, but I'm supposed to be happy. I've done all the things that these humans have to do. And one of the interesting things that came up while you were talking that I've noticed a pattern of people, people that feel like they don't belong here. Obviously, we are one of these volunteers that came down to help the earth raise. Like we kind of find that out over time. But I've noticed that with the star seeds and the light workers, there's a common thread that we achieve things very quickly, very early. Like I say, I was an art director by the time I was 25. Anything I wanted to do, I achieved.
Yeah.
And I wasn't happy. And part of me feels like that's part of the process of like, okay, I did all these, like we have to learn in those first 20, 30 years of life. Like I did all the things. I didn't wait my entire life to do all the things. I had my adventures. I had all these check marks, but I'm still not happy. And I really do feel like that's part of the process. And I'm curious, going through that process after you were looking at your life as a whole, what was the moment where you said to yourself, this must change. Like I cannot live this way anymore because I'm depressed or unhappy or just bursting to do something more, even prior to knowing what your purpose was.
Yeah, it really started that moment where I felt like I woke up in my home office of like, I don't understand where I am or how I even got here, but this isn't right. And it was very, like I said, I didn't have a sense of direction. And it wasn't until living in Hawaii around the same time that I told my ex, like, I just don't think I'm here to be a designer. Like, I think it's a tool for more. I was so depressed. I struggled with really deep depression for a long time and had a very terrible attempt, definitely failed attempt at committing suicide when I was about 12 and made the choice to stay. And I don't know that I could describe that moment other than it's like, I knew when I woke up that it was like, okay, well, if I'm here, I'm going to see it through. And even then it was like, I couldn't find happiness. I didn't even know what that meant. I was a shell. I was numb. Like I was just going through the motions. And my boyfriend at the time, and I had gotten into an argument and he went off to some party and I just like drove around the island and I was sobbing the whole time. And so hard that I had to pull over at this overlook. And it was pretty late at night. And I was crying so hard that I thought I was going to hyperventilate. And all of a sudden, and this is where the first moment of me being able to get traction towards who I'm here to be and what I'm here to do happened, is I kind of like slipped and fell through the void. So the void is a concept that I work with in my work, which I'm happy to talk more about. But essentially it was like, I was sitting there in my car and I was sobbing and all of a sudden I just stopped. And it felt like an out-of-body experience. And I was by no means spiritual. I was definitely not woo at the time, but that's how I would have described it, is I could still feel myself sitting in the car at the overlook, but the rest of me, like my soul, my spirit, my being was like out amongst the universe, like just like one with the cosmos. And again, this is never language that I would have used before that moment, but that's how it felt. And when it happened, like I could feel who I was supposed to be. Like I could actually feel her and her way of being and her energy. And like, there was just so much peace. It was just at peace and so calm. And I tried so hard to like grip this moment and like soak in it as much as I could. And then it was over and I just like calmly drove myself home. And it was the first time that I was able to start moving myself forward and able to start getting traction, because I actually had my own definition and my own felt experience of who I'm here to be. And even though it wasn't like this clear vision of like, go out and do this and buy that and whatever, it was like, I could work towards feeling that way. And so even though it wasn't clear yet what my purpose was, and it would take time for me to really clarify that, it's like I started making progress. I started being able to do that personal growth work and hear all the things that we hear that I think are hard for us when we're really depressed. Like there's so much that the personal growth world likes to like shout at us, like just be positive and just and none of it lands, or like have trust and faith. Like a lot of the things that I say now would have just driven me crazy before, because I wouldn't, what does that even mean? What does joy mean? I hated the word joy. Like, what? That's not a real thing.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. And so it gave me this felt experience of like, this is what it means for me to feel happy. This is what it means for me to feel aligned. And it became this recurring theme in my life of when I was able to reach that guidepost and I was actually showing up in that way and feeling that way, I would have another moment of like slipping and falling through the void and basically connecting to my truth and to the universe and that deeper, like, this is my mission. This is who I'm here to be in the world. And so I was able to like inch my way forward. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's what comes up.
No, absolutely. And I love this because I think I've had this conversation so many times about those moments. I just said the other day, this still happens to me, is when we're in that deep purging, after, even before, after, during, whenever we're in that space of the void, which I do want to talk about, you can be purging and crying. And then all of a sudden, just like that, you pause and it's like your soul takes over and says, no, let me really show you who you are, just so you know that this is not the experience that you're meant to have. And I think it is so beautiful that you mentioned that and you brought it up, because there are people that go through those dark times and those depression times. And it's good to know, or at least I feel, that my higher self, my soul, my spirit team is always there protecting me. And when things get really rocky, they do have a way of stepping in and pulling me out and saying, look at the bigger picture, whatever that is. That's happened to me so many times. And it's just such a beautiful experience to discuss. Now you've created the Call of the Void TV. And I think that's actually how I initially met you, as I was looking online and I was going through my own personal journey several years ago. I think I found your work several years ago, maybe like 2015 or 2014.
Oh, wow.
Eons ago. I don't know if you know that, but I remember looking and finding this article on the void. And then I got to your website and I started reading about the heroine's journey. And the heroine's journey is the spiritual journey. It's not just the hero's journey where he fights the demon. It's like the continuing journey of growth. And that's what really drew me to you. I would love to hear your thoughts on how you didn't really come up with the concept of the heroine's journey, but what drew you to that process as well. And also talk a little bit about the void. Like, what is the void? What is that place that we go through during this journey? Because that, I think, is the meat of the journey.
Yes. It's my favorite topic.
I know. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
We were not going to not bring it up.
So at the end of 2014, I had gotten to a place in my life where everything was feeling really good. I felt really clear about what I was creating. My business was thriving. Like, I was making a ton of money and I had a great team. And I felt like I was on the verge of this great awakening and that I was going to expand in these really amazing ways. And I thought I had a sense of like, this is what my life is going to look like next year. And decided to end a 2-year relationship with a man that I loved, but who just was no longer right for me. And a couple of weeks after we split up, he first started stalking me a little bit. And then when I asked him to leave me alone, he ended up committing suicide. And it just flattened me. I mean, absolutely flattened me. I had really terrible PTSD. I ended up in an abusive and toxic relationship because of the PTSD. My business just died the slow death. I mean, I couldn't. If you came to me and you said, I want to give you money for a website, how do I do that? Just by telling you, I would energetically just like send you away. And yeah, I struggled with a lot of health issues because of the trauma and the anxiety. And so I just went through this huge, unexpected dark night of the soul that really changed the trajectory of my life in an instant. And so in the aftermath of that, I started writing the Unravel book. I didn't realize that's what I was doing. But as soon as I realized I was writing a book, a friend and mentor recommended the writer's journey to me, which is basically Joseph Campbell's hero's journey framework for screenwriting. And even though I wasn't writing a screenplay, I found it to be so helpful in the process of how do we craft a story. And had been studying it. And in that first year after my life, it was around Thanksgiving, had this like second coming of the grief. I was so frustrated. I was in so much pain. And I really felt like I'm never going to get out of this. Like, I'm never going to get out of this grief. Anytime I think I'm making progress, like it comes back up. I felt like I was right back where I started. And I felt this pull, those little like divine spirit nudges to pick up the writer's journey. And I started reading it, and I was reading about, he talks about the second ordeal where we've gone through death and rebirth, which I had definitely done in my healing work. And we're making our return. So we're working towards coming back to our life, to our community, to whatever, with whatever we've gained from this journey. And it's like that second coming of the bad guy, or the, you know, in movies, it's like the chase scene and the final battle,
I so
right?
feel this.
And it clicked for me in a way that I so needed, and was also so frustrated by, was that the fall was not the hard part. Like, hitting rock bottom is not the hard part. It hurts terribly, horribly, awfully, but it's not the hard part. And I used to think that it was like resiliency, right? Like, we fall down, we bounce back up. We hit rock bottom, we get back up. We go through the hero's journey cycle, the heroine's journey, and we just loop back around from the momentum. And it was realizing that coming back, rising up and coming back, is a choice. And it's a choice that we have to make every moment of every day. And sometimes those choices are really hard and really impossible, and we fuss our way through them like 2-year-olds having a tantrum. But it was realizing that, wow, I have to make the choice now to rise up and come back, to step out of this place of pain that, even though I say consciously, I don't want this anymore, this doesn't feel good, this hurts, subconsciously, I know how to do it. I know how to be grieving and broken. I know how to have a business that's failing. So it's like learning to step outside of that subconscious programming that we pick up when we're in struggle, and saying, this isn't what I want. I want to choose to rise. And so I realized that the hero's journey, the heroine's journey, this whole framework is this powerful personal growth tool, because we're always on some kind of journey, and we have journeys inside journeys, and when one is ending, another is beginning. And it just really helped give me a framework for, okay, this is where I'm at in the process. Like, I could see all the different points and how they lined up with this framework, and I could say, I'm here and I want to be here. That means I need to do these things. I need to work through these things. I need support in this way. And it just gave me this powerful point of reference to create my own map. And so I've incorporated aspects of it into my work, into journey mapping. And the void is just, the void is the gateway. It's the gateway to everything that we desire. And we don't let ourselves go through it because we have to surrender and drop into the pain, the heartache, the emotions, like, and we fight against that so hard. So the whole death and rebirth part of this journey is where the void is. And what happens is, and I'll see if I can explain this quickly. I know we have time, but so
we've got time.
There's a form of process work that I did in order to heal my PTSD and really start getting my life on track after everything I went through. And the way that it works, the idea of it is that we have expansive and contractive emotions. So neither are good or bad. One set's more expansive and one's more contractive. And so often we drop through the contractive emotions, but we don't. So, okay, up top is all the contractive emotions in this process work, and we drop through the layers of them. So we might start off with, I feel angry. What's beneath the anger? I feel frustrated. What's beneath that? I feel sad. What's beneath that? I feel jealous, isolated, whatever those contractive experiences are. And the idea in this process work is that we then hit the unknown zone, or the void. And it's this pocket of nothingness. It can feel like death. It can feel like you're going to drop into it and you're just going to disappear. It's going to consume you. It's all the things that we're uncomfortable with. And so instead of moving through it down into the expansive emotions like love and peace and joy and truth and purpose, we'll bounce through our contractive experience. We might sit right on the edge. A lot of people that are depressed and suicidal sit right on the edge of the void. But we'll jump back up because we don't think we can survive dropping through. And if you think about a time in your life, and I've had many of these, and I'm sure you have too, where you're so overcome with, say, grief. Like the grief is so big and you can feel it like coming up from deep inside. And instead of surrendering to it, we resist it. We might off gas it a little bit. We might cry a little, but we're going to try to get back to, I should distract myself. I should go do this. What will make me happy? What will make me feel good? Because we feel like if we surrender to it, it's going to consume us, that we actually won't survive it. And in my grief, I had so many moments where I was certain, even being a logical, intelligent human, knowing that it's a very, very slim, if no chance of me dying from crying about my loss.
But sometimes it really does feel like you could.
I was so sure that this is it. I will not get back up off the floor if I surrender to this. And I did it anyways. It was just very intuitive, instinctual process for me to surrender to it. And I'm really grateful that I was able to, because when we can surrender and just drop into them, we go through the void, we move through the void, and we're able to then access everything that we say we want. But because we're so often busy trying to not feel bad and be positive and only be in the light and try to find the lessons and the gifts without really feeling all of the messy, hard emotions, we never move through this pocket, and we're never able to get to the other side and access whatever source is for us. So for example, when I drop through the layers and I move through the void, I always land at love. Love is what source feels like for me, and it's different for different people. But so the void that we work with in all different ways is about, let's drop through, like let's move through the things that you are most afraid to move through that pocket where you feel like it's going to consume you, and into truth and into source, so that you can then utilize your soul, your higher self, the universe, your spirit guides, whatever those things are for you, in order to create what it is that you want.
Oh, so beautiful. And I love how encouraging you are to walk through the void. You know, a lot of times, like you said, people are so deathly afraid of it. It's like, I don't want to be hurt. And here's the thing, like we have all been hurt by the world, by relationships, but that depth that we go through spiritually is something more. It's something beyond. And that's why it's called the dark night of the soul. I mean, you literally have to die and be reborn.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love how encouraging you are about it. And I don't say that lightly, but it feels like just to say we cannot access the gifts that we have and what we came here to do unless we go through this. And it's almost like an initiation. I love this little baby kitty. It's so cute.
His favorite topics.
I know. He's just like, yep, I'm here. I heard you say void. I'm here. But it is an initiation. And I think all big spiritual journeys have those mega initiations that we have to go through. I mean, you think of like shamans going on the journey and having these amazing visions and dreams of being eaten alive. I mean, that's basically what it feels like, but it is someone who has gone through that. It's absolutely the gateway to discovering why you're here. And I want to ask you about this because in my experience, I know a lot of people that have gone through one big journey, one big void, and they came out of it and they're like, okay, I feel like I went through two. I had a huge spiritual awakening, massive trauma, the whole shifting of life. And then once I got to a certain point where I was like, okay, I feel good. Then I had this crazy yod activate in my astrological chart, which is like the hand of destiny. And then I went through like a whole separate journey of like completely different things. I didn't even know were there. It was like I cleared the physical life. And then, I mean, I had like a twin flame experience, the ascension, everything happened at once. And I feel like I went through this twice. And I'm curious because it sounds like you did too, like going through this experience once, but then that moment where you're like, oh dear God, I think I'm going through this again. It sounds like you have, right? And how
absolutely.
was that the second time? Because I know the big thing for a lot of people is like, oh my gosh. I know for me, it was like, oh my gosh, I've just been through this. That was harrowing. That was insane. Like Kundalini awakening, all of that. And then to realize that you're going through it again, it's like, I don't know if I could handle this. And I'm curious what your feelings were on that.
You know, I'm an oddball, maybe in the sense that I wouldn't say I get this way for myself because I know it's not fun, but I get inappropriately excited when people are like, my life is falling apart. Cause I'm like, it's so wonderful. Like, I know that it sucks.
You know what's on the other side.
But yeah. And so I have really learned imperfectly to embrace death and rebirth. because I feel like that is where so much, like the most good that is in my life has come from. And it's a really confusing kind of duality to have such gratitude for everything that I've been through right alongside like gut-wrenching grief. And so I didn't have, when I went through this for the first time was when I was around 21, and maybe even before when I was suicidal, when I was younger, a smaller version of it. And of course, little ones here and there in between, but I didn't have the same knowledge and the same skills to really navigate it at the level that I'm able to now. And of course, there's always so much to learn and grow, but I feel like, I just went through something that was not as big. I went through a really, really challenging breakup with the person that I thought was the love of my life, that I was supposed to be with. That was the ending of my story. And in doing that, like all of this old stuff from like my relationship with my dad and all of my past relationships came up. And so it was much different than my ex committing suicide, but it was this huge, huge death and rebirth. And it was one of the most painful periods of my life. It was a much shorter window, but it was like I was able to say, I know what this is, and I know that there's no way around it. Like the only way, it sounds cliche, the only way is through. And so knowing that I will survive it, I have survived really horrible things, and hopefully I'll never have to, but there are other awful traumatic things that I might have to go through in my life. But there is such a deep level of appreciation now for those moments, as much as I wish that they wouldn't happen, or I wish they could be different. I'm never grateful that my ex is dead. And I can't imagine my life without that having happened. Excuse me. I have relationships with people that I never would have had relationships with, that are like family to me, that I cherish so deeply. Call of the Void, journey mapping, my book, none of this would have been born. I wouldn't be able to serve and support people the way that I am now had I not been through that. And so it's being able to hold the duality, I think, has been a really powerful shift for me of it can be both. I can be tremendously grateful and appreciative for where I am in my life and what I have because of what I've been through, and still be heartbroken that he's passed away. Or and so yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question. I don't enjoy it. I don't look forward to it. I don't hope for it. But when it starts to happen, I definitely have a sense of surrender of, okay, there's nothing to do but to go through it, and to go through the fire, and to feel awful, and to grieve, and to move, and to purge, and to like have everything be up in the air and unknown and uncertain. And I have a much deeper sense of trust, both in the universe, that we're always being guided and we're always being supported, even though I don't believe that everything happens for a reason in the traditional sense, if it's all divinely agreed upon. Some of it's just human and it sucks. But I have a tremendous amount of support or trust in the fact that I'm being supported by the universe. I'm being shaped even more to be who I'm here to be. And also, I trust myself to navigate it. I know that I can survive it, and I can create something because of it.
I love that. That was my experience as well. Is the first one was the worst. I mean, the body, and I mean, it was insane. I thought I was going to die, literally. Yeah. The second one, it was with love, and it was with heartbreak. And I do remember sitting there telling myself, I mean, I would converse with my friend every day. She was going through the same exact thing with somebody else. It was crazy. It's crazy how you find soulmates and partners that are going through the same thing every single time you are. And every day we were like, okay, here's another purge. Like this just came up, and we would almost, I don't want to say it was funny, but we would almost laugh about it because we knew that we had what it took, having gone through the bigger, more traumatic stuff earlier on, that to go through this second wave. And I know that it was with the ascension, and there was a lot of people going through the same thing. So that kind of helped to know that I wasn't alone, and everybody was going through very similar situations. But you do realize that you are a stronger person because of it, and that you can navigate it. And I think that that's the beauty of life, of being a human, of having this existence and this experience, is once you allow yourself to go through the void the first time, everything else seems easier. And you have more confidence that, yes, I know what pain feels like, but I also know how beautiful it feels on the other side of this. And I know usually you have your tools ready then. You're like, okay, I learned all these things the first time. I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to just kind of surrender is such a big one. So I want to talk about surrender, but I also want to dive into your book. So I think we can kind of combine these because I heard you say earlier that you had started to write your book, but you didn't know that you were writing your book. And I do feel that this is your personal story. And that's usually how that writer's journey goes, is like, I know for myself, I started writing this story. It's a fiction. And I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like this thing is coming to me and I'm just starting to write things down and I don't know what this is. And it took many, many years, and I'm still writing it, to take form and to shape. And I'm curious if you wouldn't mind sharing what that journey was like, from knowing like, oh, I think this is something that I need to write. I think this is a book, through the writing process. And then what I love also is on the back end, when you published it, you had so many people coming to you saying like, this is my story. I mean, I love the feedback that you got. I would love for you to share that journey with us of creating peace.
It's been a journey. Like I said, it was about 6 months after my loss that I was writing, and I hadn't been able to write after he passed away. It was really hard for me. And all of a sudden, like, stories just started pouring out of me, and they didn't feel like they fit on my blog or on social media. And they didn't feel like they were meant to be forced to. And so I just wrote a ton of stories, not all of which ended up in the final book. Probably will end up in another book. But I realized it was this moment. I think I was on a hike on the little trail behind my apartment, and just like the stories would just come up and I had to capture them. Like if I didn't, I just could feel, I know a lot of creatives can relate to that, of like, if I don't catch this, it will be gone.
Yeah, totally. So I got my phone all the time on me.
And also if I don't get it out of me, it will kill me. And so I just was having a lot of those moments, and it was a divine download on a hike of, I think I'm writing a book, and I'm pretty positive it's about this loss and what I'm going through. And it was a really trippy experience, because some of the stories would just come through and they were about things from the past, and other times a story would come through that was about the future, and then I would go live it out almost. And you can argue that it was like, it influenced what I did, or what's the phrase when you, I don't remember the phrase, but it was like I would write these stories and then it would happen. And it was just this really weird thing. And I also realized, though, as I started working with the Hero's Journey framework for writing it, that I was still living out the ending of it. And so I wrote whatever came to me, but I stopped kind of putting pressure on myself to like make it something. And it was something I needed to do things with. And I would share little bits on social media, but it wasn't until, and I did that off and on for a few years, but it wasn't until last year that I was finally like, okay, it's time to finish this book. Like, I've lived out the ending. I'm on the other side of this story. I'm starting a new one, but I'm on the other side of this one. And so it was the most painful and beautiful process I've ever put myself through. And I had no idea that would be the case. I think we romanticize writing a book. We'll sit at the coffee shop, it's going to be like this really cool. No.
It's basically crying the entire time.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, I cried so much. And I had a lot of blocks around it because it was a very personal experience. And I had never written a book, so I can write short social media and blog posts, but I had never written in that way. And so it was this painful process of some stories had been there since the first year and they were perfect. And then there was all these like random stories throughout. And there were some chapters that I just had to literally write. And then I said this, and then he did that. And then we went there. It was like, I just had to get something out. And so I had this really messy first draft, which I think is important to anyone. Your first draft is probably going to suck. And it's supposed to.
It's just a whole bunch of brain dump of I don't know yet.
Yeah. And what was really challenging for me, I think, was not just crafting it into something and finding my own voice in that, but like, it was it was a final layer of healing to go back through my own story and experience, like moment by moment, like the tentpole moments is what Hannah Brencher calls it for writing, like these key pivotal moments in my journey. And even though I was going back through it to rework it, and I was getting notes from a few close people in my life, like every time I read through the whole thing, there was this part of me that was just like, wow. Like, and certain chapters would still tense me up and definitely made me cry. But yeah, the surrender piece was huge there. I didn't have a need. It wasn't like, oh my God, I'm going to write this great book and I'm going to like, which I think maybe some people have when they have like a novel idea. I don't know if this is true for you with your book being nonfiction, but for me, it being a memoir, like there was no desire to be like, hey, everybody, like come read about my life and some of the really hard moments in it, so that you can judge me and judge them and judge my experience. There was no, like, it was just like I had to, like the book was not about me, even though it was my story. It had to be written or it was going to kill me. And I knew that it was meant to be put out into the world, and really that it wasn't up to me. Like, yes, we can do the things to make it successful and promote it and all of that, but it wasn't up to me to decide who was going to love it and who wasn't, how successful it was or wasn't going to be. Like, it was something that just needed to be put out. And my only intention with the book was I want people to feel less alone and less crazy, because I certainly felt very alone and very crazy in my experience. And I wanted to show how messy the process of healing is, because I don't think that we talk about that enough. I think we always hear stories that are like, it was really hard and everything fell apart, and then one day I turned a corner and it was all better. And it's like, no, I want to hear about how much you cried in the shower. Like, how hard was it really? Because we don't talk about that. And that's the feedback I've gotten the most, is people saying, thank you for writing this. It makes me feel less crazy. It makes me feel less alone. And the one that really, really gets me is that I hear a lot of messages from people that are like, I just realized that I have not done my healing work, that I still have more healing to do. And their willingness to start doing that work, because I think what the book has done is normalize the process a bit, at least for my audience and the people who read it, of it's supposed to suck and it's supposed to be hard. And a lot of times it gets harder before it gets better. And a lot of times healing hurts a lot more first before you actually start to feel better. And making that normal, that there's no one right way or one right timeline for healing. And so, yeah, writing a book is a huge process of surrender. It's incredibly painful and vulnerable, and also tremendously healing.
So I'm going to answer your question. I love that. There's so many other things I want to dive into, but I'm hearing you, and yes, I am writing a fiction, but it's actually what I've done is I've taken my own personal story, my memoir, and I've made it into a fiction, quote unquote, where I've added like layers of story and history on top of it. It takes place in Ireland during the famine, but it's about a girl who has a spiritual awakening, discovers her purpose, and finds her magic. So I could absolutely relate to this process, where I've been working on it for it's going to be 5 years at the end of this year. And it was like bawling. I mean, I kept having to pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down. And I love what you said, because I really do feel that there is something here in terms of pulling in guidance, multiple timelines happening, where the same exact thing was certain things happened, but then certain things happened after I wrote them. Yeah. And I don't really believe I was influencing them, because I was like, I don't even know where this is coming from. And then I started watching, like, wait a minute, I wrote about this person and then I met this person in real life. Like, this is crazy. So I really do feel that I don't feel we're creating our life as much as we're kind of tapping into some higher knowledge of knowing, like, this is the complete story. And I will have to say that it's a trilogy. So I've already lived through book 1, and I'm now able to sit and not be as emotional, but then I'm going to get through book 2, and the story hasn't ended yet, even though I know the ending that I want. So it's that amazing feeling of like, I don't really know how to end it yet, because I haven't lived that.
Yeah.
But I love that because I think that there are people that sit down and like, yeah, I'm going to write a story. But many people right now, especially in the nonfiction world, like I think I'm crazy for having to tack on all this plot. I mean, that was the hardest part, was like, okay, well, I got that, the real part, but like, now what do I do with this plot?
Right.
Like the stuff that actually did happen. But a lot of people are coming forward right now. So many of my friends are like, I feel I need to write. I feel I need to create. I feel I need to tell my story.
Please do.
Yes. And what I think very drew me to you in the first place was how real you were. You do not spiritual bypass anything. You are like, kids, this shit sucks. It's going to be hard, but it's also beautiful. But you, every day I read your, you see me putting hearts on you. I'm like, girl, like I'm like, am I stalking her? Do I look like I'm stalking her? But every day I'm like, oh, what does she have to say? Because you are out there telling this real story, showing us what the human experience is really like. And I think that is so beautiful because everyone goes through this. No one escapes the pain. No one escapes the transformation, especially not in this lifetime that we're in right now. And it's such a gift to have someone like you sharing that pain and willing to be vulnerable. It's gonna make me tear over here because people do relate. You know, there's so many things we see on TV where it's like the badass woman's over there like kicking ass and taking names and like she wins the guy, and yeah, she goes through like a little bit of trauma, but not, it's like
Right.
no. Like we want to see the real thing. I don't relate to any of that. I'm like, yeah, no, that's definitely fictional. That's made up. I am so connected to real people that are talking about the real journey and what they've gone through, because every single word you've said on this entire show is like, wait, we're twins. Like that was me. That was me. That was me.
Right.
But we're all the same, right? We're all this big collective consciousness. But I would love to dive into that just for a moment here. Is there are a lot of people, because you mentioned this earlier, that coach and that feel like, okay, I went through a little thing and I'm ready to, talk to, and they really do come from a place of spiritual bypassing. Like there are so many people out there. Here's an example. When COVID happened, I looked around and said, who is talking about what's happening and who is trying to bypass what is happening? And so many people, so many coaches were like, stay positive, don't get lost in fear, da da da. And I'm sure you had that experience as well. And I was like, wait a minute, shit is going down right now. Like you need to be talking about what's going down. We're having a mass awakening. And let's talk about that. What was your experience with COVID and seeing what was happening? And how did you feel called to communicate to the world? Like maybe you weren't personally going through something, but you could definitely see that everyone else around you was.
It's such a great question. I think one of the first things I asked people I know, people that are close to me, is, have you had a nervous breakdown yet? I think that you should. Like, have you let this hit you?
You're like
yet?
the cheerleader. Like, call me. You're going through some stuff. But really, you are. I mean, you're going to be the first person that I call, to be honest, next time I go through something.
But yeah, it's been, I had some stuff happen. Like we noticed right away, like some clients weren't paying their invoices who always pay on time. Some projects got put on hold. Thankfully, things have gone forward smoothly and we've been getting a lot of work and our clients have been doing well. So it ended up being fine in that regard. But there was definitely not only feeling the impact on my business, my finances, my team, my clients, but feeling that collective, it really threw me off at first. And I let myself feel it. I let myself think through, and this is something that I do probably because I have had trauma and I have had my life fall apart and I have had my business fail, is I don't do it from a negative of like worst case scenario is going to happen. But I always think through, okay, what happens if the economy collapses or none of my clients pay their invoice or we don't make any more money? Like, what am I going to do? And thankfully, because of everything I've been through, I'm able to do it from a protective place of, well, I know it's going to be fine. Like I've been in worst case scenarios I never thought I would be in and come out of it. And that surrender piece of, okay, like the world is stopping right now. I can kind of rest in that. Yes, I need to think about taking care of my life and taking care of the people I love and staying current on what's going on, obviously. And this is what's happening right now. Like, how can I surrender into that and kind of realign my goals, my life, my business, business with what's happening. But yeah, I'm not a fan of spiritual bypassing. It really frustrates me because it's so toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And like we were saying,
it's even more toxic, I think, than like hiding and not dealing with your feelings and just bypassing them and being like, nope, it's all good. Let's just pretend to be happy.
Yeah. Like, feel your feelings. And I did ask people that, like, have you had a nervous break? Like, have you let this hit you? And have you felt your feelings about it? Because if you don't, they're still happening in your body, and you're going to be stressed and anxious and depressed, and you're probably going to eat too much, and you're going to treat yourself like crap, and you're going to pick fights. Like, it's going to manifest in some way. So it's better that you like take it in, feel your feelings productively. Don't stew in them. Don't tell stories about them. Like, just let it move. And then surrender, like show up moment to moment, fully present. And I think people think surrender means giving up, but it's just being very present with what's happening, being in the flow, making decisions in the moment, trusting yourself and your inner guidance. And so, yeah, I went the opposite way of spiritual bypassing. I mean, I stayed positive in the ways that are important, but it was like, what are you feeling? Feel it. Like, let it be hard right now, and be scared if you're scared.
And that's what enables you to hold space for everyone else. That's the thing, is you are a coach, you are a healer, you are teaching people how to go through this. And if you're not willing to go through it yourself, you can't really describe or hold space for other people. So I did notice that on your social media, and this will be the last thing I say, I noticed on your social media that you seem to have been going through another level of awakening. And I think we all are. It's like it's like, it might not be the traumatic part, but then like, I know personally for me, it's like, oh, wait a minute. I thought I knew my purpose and I thought I saw the bigger picture, but now I'm really seeing the bigger picture, or I'm really getting a sense that there's something even more than I don't know about yet. And I'm curious, having seen your posts, you're out in the wilderness, you're like, things are coming, I don't know what it is. What do you feel is next for you? What do you feel is next in the Stephenie evolution of your spirit? Or maybe you don't know and you're just waiting to find out.
I do know, and I don't. I mean, there's logistical things about my life. I feel very called to live off the grid, which I will still have the internet because I love my work.
Got to have the internet.
Yeah. And that has been a very big unknown, and not knowing when or how or what it's going to look like, and things not flowing. But again, just trusting that, okay, I guess I'm supposed to be here for another 6 months. And so that part is a little murky, but I have been wanting to start the Institute. It's the Goldenrod Institute. The name has very woo divine meaning, and came to me during some process work, but it's basically taking everything that I do and creating a research-based process that can then be taught to other coaches, to therapists. It can go into schools, because I don't think we learn these skills early enough. It can go into corporations, like this really big, and it's something that has been brewing since my loss, like something that started coming up, and questions I was asking and research I was doing, but I'm very clear that it's what I want to start. And I'm getting ready to launch a podcast called Tales from the Journey, which is actually, it's kind of marketing and conversation for Call of the Void, but it's really also the core foundational piece of the research for the Institute, because I feel like I know, and I'm sure you know, like we have that deeper trust in something bigger, but a lot of people don't understand how intuition works, or process works, or energy work, or purpose. And I want to have that foundation of research so that it can reach more people, very much like what Brene Brown does. But yeah, that's ready to come alive. And it's caused me to question a lot of, okay, how do I structure my business? How do I structure my life and my time? Knowing that I need personally to be out in nature, and to have this land, and have animals, and to live in this certain way. And there's this big thing that is just pulling me towards it. And it feels like a culmination of everything I've been through in my life's work, and is so different because it's not about me. Like right now, my business is very me and my story and my brand. And this is not that. It's like what I want to leave behind so that we can all live our purpose, and that we can start stepping outside of those systems at a much earlier age, so we can be happy and contribute and make a difference.
That's incredible. And you're thinking about your legacy. You know, what is it that I want to leave behind to make humanity a better place? And of course, I love how you said that. Like, we do go through a period where we have to share our stories, we have to share it personal, but then you take another step up and say, yes, but how am I going to change the institutions that are in place? How am I changing the world? And this is something that I'm so excited about, this because it's something that's so necessary. I've had many conversations with other coaches, other guests on this show, that we don't do enough, like you said, at the early ages. Like, somebody even said, like, why are we waiting till someone's 40 and has been through an entire life and has cleared all this trauma before they open up to their gifts and their purpose? Why are we not teaching children at a younger age what purpose is, how to work with energy, all of this? Because a lot of times what we do right now is we do it out of necessity. Like, okay, I'm going through some stuff. I need to learn something. I need to get over this. Now I need to go find a healer. I need to find a coach. But what if you had those people leading you through your life? I almost see like a Hogwarts, but like the scientific, like almost like Mary Curie, but like Hogwarts combined into one, of like people teaching in classes. And this is so necessary. I'm so excited for you to go on this journey, and I can't wait to hear more about this. I'm so sad we are at the end of the show. It's always such a sad time. Like, wait, we could do this forever. But I would love to know if you have a last piece of wisdom that you want to leave our guests with. It's like, if you didn't hear anything that I said, here is a bit of inspiration for you to move forward in your life.
Yeah, my thing is always like, do whatever work you need to do to build that level of self-trust in yourself, and so that you can discern what's right for you. Because we are talking about a lot of things you can do and processes, and there are coaches and there are books and there are all these things out there. And I think what I wish I would have learned at a much younger age is that nobody but me really knows what's right for my life and my work and my purpose. And so building that self-trust in your intuition, in your own connection to source, and so that you're able to discern when all these amazing and brilliant people, and also people that aren't so awesome, come in and try to tell you who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to live your life. Like, you have that internal guidance system that is just a quick check of like, nope, that's not right for me, and I don't want to do that, or this, I don't care that it's what nobody else wants for me or doesn't make sense, this is what's right for me. I just think it's so important that we build that connection to our intuition and that trust in ourselves, that even if we're being called away from everything known and familiar into something really hard or scary, that like, we've got our own backs and we can do this because we have that connection.
I love that. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you being here with us today and sharing all of your wisdom. And remind me of your kitty's name.
This is Dexter.
Dexter, that's right. Yeah, how could I forget that? Dexter. Hi, Dexter. Dexter, thanks for being here with us. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom, and always being so courageous and vulnerable with your story. For everyone that's watching, I'm going to put Stephenie's links on all the videos, whether you're watching this on Facebook, you're watching this on YouTube. I highly recommend you check her website out, and especially all of the Facebook stories and the social media stories. And of course, your book, Unravel, which is online right now, that you guys can purchase. And it's beautiful, and just, you're beautiful. And I'm so excited to see what you come up with next.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for creating this amazing space. Like, you're just such a magical, amazing person. I feel so grateful to be connected.
Oh, thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Now I'm blushing. And if you guys are watching this, every week we do this on the Magick Grove. You can find us on Facebook. The group is Magick Grove. We do this live if you want to watch it live, or you can watch it on my YouTube channel later, Kristen Nettopak, and be sure to subscribe, because we do this, we do other videos as well. I will see you guys next week for another magical guest, and we will talk then. Bye-bye. Bye.